By the end of this video, I can confirm that your perspective on the current Lakers roster will be completely altered. You won't see this team the same anymore, and you can mark my word on that. Rob Pelinka. Yeah, this random guy. He's the singular thing that's holding the Lakers franchise together, and he hasn't had it easy, alright? This man has had to deal with the infamous cycle that happens every single year. This routine that he has been forced to get used to that I like to call LeBron's deadline. Pretty much every year since 2015, the general manager of the team that LeBron plays for has to completely restructure their team at the trade deadline because of the pressure that he puts on the expectations of that franchise. And usually, that strategy doesn't work out too great. But the last LeBron deadline, which was last year, was truly miraculous. I mean, Rob Pelinka managed to turn Russell Westbrook, Kendrick Nunn, Thomas Bryant, Patrick Beverley, and some picks into D'Lo, Rui Hachimura, Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, and Mo Bamba. Can you even imagine the Lakers making the playoffs without D'Angelo, Rui, or Vando? Because I really can't. And now, moving along into the 2023-24 NBA offseason, Rob Pelinka has struck gold again. He was amazingly able to retain Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, Jared Vanderbilt, and D'Angelo Russell, while also somehow signing a 17-point per game scorer in Gabe Vincent, while also adding 7 new players to the roster. Yes, 7. What the Laker fan will find is that a little spark of dopamine comes to them when they lay their eyes upon this new roster. But, yep, there's a but. There's a problem, and we got to see this very problem working in full effect after last year's trade deadline. So, after the deadline last year, the Lakers had 13 players that were once heavy minute getters either earlier in the season for the Lakers or for that player's prior respective team before we acquired them at the deadline. And this left Coach Darvin Ham with, well, some major issues and some critical decisions to make. How on earth would he manage the limited amount of minutes that he has to hand out to all these deserving guys? Well, he didn't end up managing them well. Minute inconsistencies happened all throughout the regular season and postseason, and this is where things get crazy. There were 6 players on the Lakers that were consistent starters at one point for the Lakers, and later in the same season found themselves warming the bench, getting 0 minutes. I just want you to take a second to think about how crazy that is. And those players are Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, Lonnie Walker, Rui Hachimura, Max Christie, and Troy Brown. Yes, I know this is shocking, but the Lakers' rotations were so inconsistent that all of those players were once getting 30-plus minutes a night and found themselves getting 0 at one point. Yes, Rui Hachimura was benched by Darvin Ham, and then later in the same season, he was getting 40 minutes a night. Troy Brown, same thing, 35 minutes a night to bench warmer. Jared Vanderbilt, 35 a night to bench warmer. Malik Beasley, Max Christie, you guys get it. Even D'Lo and Schroeder went from playing 40 minutes a night to 10 a night in certain games in the playoffs. This stat makes things even crazier. There were only 3 players that were never benched after the trade deadline and maintained consistent minutes the whole season. And those players were LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Austin Reeves. The other 12 were benched at a point in the season. And look, I haven't even talked about why this is an issue. I'm going to get into that in a second, don't worry, alright? This got so bad to the point where Mo Bamba and Wenyen Gabriel were literally switching minutes. One game Bamba would get 15, and it seemed like no matter how he performed that game, those minutes would go to Wenyen the next and Bamba would be cut out. And this issue is perfectly described by the Lonnie Walker situation. Lonnie before the deadline was a consistent starter for the team, and he was really efficient. And after this crazy number of talented guys are added to the roster, Lonnie finds himself being the odd man out, getting completely stripped of his starting role and not playing a single minute of value the rest of the regular season. Just for later in the postseason to be reinserted right back into the rotation during the middle of the Western Conference semifinals. And there's a name for this problem which I'm about to describe, and I'm going to let you know what that is in a second. But first, I just want to say that Darvin Ham was the most indecisive coach that I've ever seen last year. I'm not saying he was a bad coach, but I've never seen a rotation change as much as the Lakers did last year in the history of the NBA. It was absolutely ridiculous. And what people don't realize is that it really did lead to the downfall of our team, and here's why. When players don't know their role and are in jeopardy of losing their job every single game, they're inevitably playing for more than just to help the team win. They're playing for their job, they're playing for their livelihood. And yes, this is normal to an extent in the NBA, but not in the way that was demonstrated by Darvin Ham. We ran a 10-man rotation and only 3 guys had a guaranteed role. I mean, what that does to a player's mental state is ridiculous. One game you're a reliable player on the court, and the next game you're keeping the bench warm as can be. So it absolutely affected those role players' mental state, which obviously affects a player's performance. If you guys don't buy this or don't believe that it's an actual problem, then just do me a favor and take a look at the Denver Nuggets. They ran a consistent 8-man rotation. It didn't change once the entire season. Every single player knew their role and were given the opportunity to become as comfortable as possible in that respective role. The rotation never changed, not once, even through the playoffs. And that Denver Nuggets squad won an NBA championship. And the reason this all matters now is because the Lakers have the same problem this year, but even worse. I call it overflowing talent. We have 12 guys on the roster who would all be heavy minute players if they were on a different team. And the truth is, at points, only 8 of those guys are going to get that opportunity. And those 8 to 10 guys are going to fluctuate once again, and the exact same problem is going to develop. So we know the guys who are confirmed their minutes and aren't in any jeopardy of losing them. Those players are, again, just LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Austin Reeves. I know you guys might be looking at me like that makes no sense, but how can you expect me to consider D'Angelo Russell's role sustainable when he got his minutes stripped from him in the playoffs? How are you going to expect me to say Rui Hachimura's role is sustainable after being benched by Darvin Ham? Same thing with people who you might consider key guys. Jared Vanderbilt, benched by Darvin Ham. Max Christie, benched by Darvin Ham. And the rest are new guys without a known role. LeBron, Austin, and AD are the only guys who were never benched. Every time I say that, it gets crazier. And a big reason we saw Austin Reeves strive so much last year, which isn't talked about, is because he was instilled with confidence. He was instilled with sustainability and reliability from the people around him. He had a role and he knew his role, and he was able to only focus on the game of basketball and helping his team win because he knew his role and he had nothing else to prove. What about rookie Jalen Hood-Schifino? There's not going to be a role for him. What about Summer League MVP Max Christie? There's a chance that his potential and mindset are completely wasted due to our roster. A guy like Max Christie is going to find himself going from 25 minutes a night one night to 0 the next because of this exact issue, and it's going to completely mess up his game. D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Taurean Prince, Gabe Vincent, Cam Reddish, Jackson Hayes, Max Christie, and Jared Vanderbilt are all going to be fighting for minutes and have inconsistent roles throughout the entire season. I would love to just see a somewhat sustainable rotation because it never happened last year. Not only would that be good for the team, but it'd be good for the individual player. They'd be actually able to understand their role and not have to worry about it being switched every 2 days. They'd be able to be comfortable in their role. And look, I understand that basketball is a game of adjustments and teams have to adjust to certain assignments or defensive looks. You can't win without adjustments in the NBA. I know that. But this problem goes way beyond adjustments. What we did last year with our rotations was not adjusting to an opposing scheme. It was just pure cluelessness. And the Lakers roster this year is set up for the exact same problem to persist and plague our season once again. We look at the amount of talent on the roster and we scream with joy, but we don't look at the limited amount of opportunity that this game presents. And we definitely don't acknowledge this very untalked about problem that in this video I tried to shed some light on. Thanks for watching.